It's Louisiana Derby Day in the Big Easy. Let's cap the card for Saturday at Fairgrounds. Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, here with a very special edition of Capping the Card, where I'm going to go through race 1 through 12 on the Fairgrounds Louisiana Derby Day card, give you my top pick and top value play. Now, before we get into all of the picks and selections, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos are dropping on the channel. We have Kentucky Derby videos, Kentucky Oaks videos, we have race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs. We got you covered for the Run for the Roses and so much more. So press that like and subscribe button today. All right. Well, like I said, welcome to Capping the Card. A lot of you are probably familiar with this premise, but if you're not, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through race 1 through race 12 on Saturday's Fairgrounds card, highlighted by the Grade 2 Louisiana Derby. I'm going to give you my top pick in every single race. I'm also going to give you a value play to potentially use. Now, the value play in some instances is a horse that I think has a real shot to upset the field at a little bit of a price. Other times, I think it's a horse that is simply going to outrun their odds, maybe be a horse that is more effective being used underneath in exactas, trifectas, those sorts of wagers. So I'll try to call that out when there's a little bit of a differentiation. The other thing I'll also mention is when I give a top pick, I also try to explain why I'm using that horse, but also whether or not there are other horses that are intriguing that you might want to use in your early or late pick 5 tickets. So obviously you're not just going to be going single for all 5 legs of your pick 5. And so I'm going to try to also talk through, hey, maybe here's some horses to also consider using. Here's some horses to consider fading. All right, well, listen, enough of me talking about what the show's about. Let's get into the show and kick things off. Race number 1. It's a jam-packed card, and this is a $60,000 maiden special weight going a mile on the turf for 3-year-old fillies. And going to start off with a little bit of a price. This is a pretty evenly matched field in the grand scheme of things. You have Cherie DeVaux's favorite, All Night Revival, 9-2 is your morning line favorite. This horse coming back from a little bit of a layoff, hasn't run since mid-October, and so going to probably use this as an opportunity to play against. Steve Asmussen's also got a horse in this race who's 0 for 5 right now, does pick up Irad Ortiz Jr., but is also one who has not run since November. So I'm going to use a horse that is a little bit more active right now, and that is the number 9 Masserat at 6-1 for Brendan Walsh with Tyler Gaffalione up on the mount. Walsh and Gaffalione are always a good combination on the turf. This one has a pedigree that would suggest distance is going to very much so be his friend, sired by Curlin out of a Tappet mare. And so she is, Masserat is a really, like I said, distance favoring horse. And she really ran well last time out, I thought, going a mile and a 16th in a maiden special weight at Fairgrounds. She's run well in both of her efforts at Fairgrounds. She's been kind of marooned on the far outside in both of those races, breaking from post 12 out of 12, and then last time out, breaking from post 11 out of 12. Had Edgar Morales up both times. I don't think the ride was necessarily that bad, but the horse just got caught wide and had to give up a lot of ground. Now, one thing she does have is a devastating turn of foot, which you really saw that last time out, going a mile and a 16th. She went from almost dead last to closing like a freight train and finished third by less than 2 lengths. I think now you get Gaffalione up on the mount, and I think this one draws a little further inside. I know the 9 post is no, great post position. I'd love if this one was really in maybe post position 3 or 4. But the reality is you might save a little bit more ground here. This is a horse that will come running late. And a 6-1 on a Brendan Walsh horse with this sort of pedigree and with who's just in good form right now. Again, some questions for the Asmussen horse and the DeVaux horse, who are both coming off a little bit of layoffs. I think both have a chance to win. Absolutely. This feels like a very spready race to start an early pick 5 sequence, to be honest with you. I think the morning line indicates that as well, that there's really not a strong favorite and that you can kind of go in a couple directions, try to catch a little bit of a price. But Masserat, for me, is a top choice that I think is going to give you a little bit of that value and will probably be 3rd choice on the board come post time, maybe 2nd, but is going to be in that 4-1, 9-2, 5-1 area. And at that price, certainly worthy of a win bet. Now, in terms of a value play, actually the same price on the morning line, but this is the horse, the number 4, Never Really Know for Norm Cassie with Louis Saez up on the mount. I wonder if this one gets a little bit of attention at the windows, because this is a horse that's second back from a 6-month layoff, ran rather evenly last time out, is a horse that may actually do his best work up on the lead. Nearly won his maiden, broke his maiden going long at Saratoga over the summer and had not run since then until just last month at Fairgrounds on February 27th. Horse kind of ran evenly that day. Second time now with Lasix for Cassie, who's a 22% trainer here at Fairgrounds. Saez up on the mount, always a reliable jockey in these sorts of spots. And again, a horse that doesn't pass a lot of horses, which is a little bit of a concern, but has good early speed, might be able to get out up front with a horse like Miss Birkin, maybe on the inside for Tom Morley, another horse that has pretty decent early speed. But I just like this one second back from that little bit of a layoff. Ran a 66 Beyer speed figure last time out, which is pretty strong in comparison to where the rest of the field is. Cherie DeVaux's horse, who's your morning line favorite, ran a 69 in her last race, and Masserat ran a 68 in her last race. So, this effort from Never Really Know at 66, not that far off. Also, second back, you'd expect a little bit of improvement from that. So I think there's a reasonable expectation that this horse could move forward a little bit at 6-1. So that's how I'm going to kind of play things in race number 1. Let's head to race number 2 on the card. Another maiden race. We actually kick off the card with 3 straight maiden races. And this one is, again, kind of another interesting race because it's for Louisiana breds. We're going 6 furlongs on the dirt and $60,000 maiden special. And again, the line is pretty even across. I understand why number 11 Customs Cleared is your morning line favorite for Joseph Foster with Mitchell Merle up on the mount. But and this one, to be fair, you talk about muddied running lines. The horse ran in debut at Louisiana Downs and came in second over a fast track, then caught sloppy tracks the next 2 times out, or sealed tracks, I should say, the next 2 times out, then was on the turf the last 2 times out. Now, I actually think the horse runs better on the turf. But the bottom line is this horse is getting back to a fast track. That debut effort was against lesser competition at Louisiana Downs, for sure. And so as a result, I'm going to go with a horse that I don't know if this horse is going to attract a lot of attention or not. The number 8 Shotgun Shack for Al Stall Jr. with Tyler Gaffalione up on the mount. And I pose that question about, I don't know what this horse is going to attract at the window, because this horse has one thing that really stands out. Everybody's going to see it, which is the 47 flat gate work coming into this race on March 8th. This horse ran a 47 flat, first of 117 that day. You combine that with the fact that Al Stall Jr. is getting Gaffalione to ride this horse. Tyler's not riding a lot of Louisiana bred races. So it kind of tells me they think this horse is pretty live. If you, are giving this horse that type of a bullet work leading up to debut, and this horse had some nice works leading up to this as well, and you also attract in a top jockey to come and run and to ride the horse with you. So I think Shotgun Shack at 9-2 is an interesting horse. Oppenheimer, the dam, this is the first foal, so we don't really know what that dam side pedigree necessarily looks like in terms of precocity. And the interesting part is why I say I don't know if this horse will attract money is the sire, Mr. Money, is not particularly good first time out. Only 1 for 27 with first time starters. So not a lot of precocity up top in the pedigree. But again, I think the combination of that bullet work, attracting a top jockey for this run, 9-2 in the morning line. If that horse stays around that price, I think that's a really good play. Now, this horse could also get really hammered at the polls, at the windows. And as a result, 9-2 could become 7-5. Do I love the horse at 7-5? No, not really. But at 9-2, 4-1, 7-2, maybe even 3-1, I'd take a shot with this horse as a top pick. And Al Stall's got another nice horse in this race too, actually, if I'm not mistaken. So kind of interesting to see how this is all going to play out in this Louisiana bred race. But yeah, he's got the number 2 Free Scrim as well. And that horse is a little bit interesting as well and had a fired off of 47-3 bullet gate work on March 15th. So I think that horse at 6-1 is also a little bit interesting. Again, Dam is 0 for 2 with first out starters. But Free Scrim, again, 6-1, that horse is interesting as well. Erica Murray's up on the mount for that one. And so that's another one I'd probably want to include in some of my tickets. Now, in terms of a value play, this is one that I would probably strictly view underneath, and that is Yorktown Panther at 8-1 for Eduardo Ramirez with Ben Curtis up on the mount. I say this because this horse has done nothing but finish in the money in his entire career. 0 for 5 winning, 5 for 5 hitting the board. Listen, he's at 8-1. He's the sort of horse that I would use in your vertical exotics. I would use this horse in exactas and trifectas. This horse doesn't run anything overwhelming in terms of buyer speed figures, comes from a little off the pace, has shown some speed in certain races, has actually faced open company a couple of times. But the last 2 times out were against Louisiana breds and finished, pretty comparably positioned, second one race, third another race, but never really in contention to win. So I think this sort of horse that is a nice horse that can, like I said, hit the board for you at a little bit of a price at 8-1. And also, like I said, has been running kind of at this level and is in good form. There's a lot of first-time starters in this race. So here's a horse with a little bit of experience as well. And from a win bet standpoint, I don't necessarily love going after horses that are 0 for 5, 0 for 6, start racking up those losses. But from an underneath standpoint, if you're going to give me 8-1 on that type of a horse, then I think that's an interesting horse to use in those types of wagers. Let's go to the final of the maiden special weight races, and that is race number 3, which is another in the final $60,000 maiden special weight, going 6 furlongs on the dirt for your 3-year-old fillies. And again, going to try to go for a little bit of a price here, and that is the number 7, Atara. 6-1 for Will Walden with Louis Saez up on the mount. Part of my rationale for this is Atara's coming out of a race that I think is pretty interesting. Sierra November came back, and this was a race that was run, if I'm not mistaken, on the Risen Star Day undercard. And it was won by Velvet Vortex, and Velvet Vortex and Velvet Devil, I should say, really kind of opened up on the field. And Atara finished third that day and was kind of the best of the rest. And the horse that finished fourth, Sierra November, just ran back on Wednesday and won as your 3-5 favorite. The horse that finished eighth that day, Bundle, came back to run second in that same race with Sierra November and looked really good doing it. So it's interesting to see those 2 horses came out of that race that finished behind Atara, ran back really well. So Atara now, like I said, 69 buyer speed figure in debut, sired by Bolt Doro, stays at that 6 furlong mark. I don't feel like there's any horses in this race that are at the level of Velvet Vortex or Velvet Devil. And important to remember, particularly Velvet Vortex was your morning line favorite, was a Brad Cox, Tyler Gaffleone runner. And so that was always going to attract a lot of attention. And it was a pretty serious horse. I think Atara at 6-1 provides some nice value. It's interesting. There's a couple of Cox horses in this race. You have a horse like Saucier at 9-2. I definitely took a look at that horse. 47-4 work, 2 back, I think is noteworthy. The 5 furlong 101-2 work leading up to this, also something that I kept my eye on. Then you have She Won the Budge, and or She Won't Budge, I should say, for Army Mule, or by Army Mule, out of a Curlin mare. And this one is a full sibling that did not run particularly well in debut and took a few starts to finally get the win. And excuse me, actually needed to drop all the way down to maiden claiming company to finally get a win. And the works have been fine, but they haven't been overwhelming. Although Cox has been putting a lot of foundation into this runner, gets Flavian Pratt up. But again, Atara, I think just that experience. Ran a good race, ran against good competition. The horses that have run behind her came back to run very, very well next time out. She was a $450,000 sale as well. I think she's really built for sprinting. She's Bolt Doro up top out of a Henny Hughes mare. Louis Saez up on the mount for Bill Walden. I just think this one makes a lot of sense. Walden, 31% in maiden second starts over the last year. So he definitely knows how to spot them and get them ready for those second starts. And I just think this one at 6-1 presents really nice value. Now, in terms of my value play, I actually went to a horse that's a little bit lower on the morning line price because I have a feeling this horse might get overlooked a little bit. And that is the number 10 Stylish Lady for Cherie DeVaux. I mentioned it because you have the 2 Cox horses in this race. You also have an Asmussen first-time starter. You have Atara, who I mentioned. So there's a fair amount of horses that are going to attract some money. I could see Cherie's horse on the far outside maybe getting overlooked a little bit. This horse has some nice works leading up to this race. And then Condi, the mare, has only other one raced foal, and the horse won in debut at Turfway Park over the synthetic. This one is sired by Violence and was a $485,000 sale. I think this one, if the Cox horses take money, which they always seem to do at fairgrounds, and rightfully so because they win a lot. If the Asmussen horse takes money, if the Tara takes a little bit of money, does Charisse horse get overlooked a little bit? Possibly. And so that's why I include this horse at 9-2 as a value play, and a horse that I'd be including in my certainly in my early pick 5 sequence. Let's shift from the maiden races to a turf race going a mile and a 16th, $50,000 optional claimer for 4-year-olds and up. And, I've been avoiding going with favorites to this point. And I think I think you can get around a lot of favorites. I think this is a very, very good betting card. If you have strong opinions, press those opinions. But I think you can get around a lot of favorites in this race, or in the not just this race might be the exception in my opinion. I really like St. Armand's Key for Joe Sharp with Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. This is a tough race. This is a really tough race, and in a really tough race, I usually don't like to come back to a favorite, but it was also really hard for me to make a case for many other horses. St. Armand's Key came back off of a significant layoff, about a 9-month layoff, and won an N1X allowance at Fairgrounds going along on the turf, earned a 92 buyer speed figure. The horse is now gelded for the first time, picks up Irad Ortiz Jr. stays on, This horse ran and won that day on that Risen Star Stakes undercard. So Irad stays on as he's back in town. And I don't know, there's not a lot to suggest that horse had a fluky effort. I mean, yes, he had the perfect trip, but he's going to get another really good trip. He's got good early speed. He probably will sit a pocket trip on the inside, or maybe go straight to the front. This horse has won gate to wire going along at Fairgrounds before, broke its maiden that way. So this horse can take him gate to wire, but I think has some versatility to come from off the pace, as you saw last time out with Irad up. So I just think this one in a field where, I looked at a couple of different horses here. You look at a horse like Freedom's Way for Eddie Keneally with Luis Saez. That's another one that is a good horse, but man, it's just been knocking around and not winning much over the last year and a half. So is second back from a little bit of a layoff. Maybe you see an improved effort from Freedom's Way at 9-2. That could certainly be a possibility. Ultimately, my value play in this race was the number 9 Realignment, 8-1 for trainer Chris Block with David Cohen up on the mount. And this is a horse, I love playing these types of horses because you can draw lines through so many of their efforts. The horse wins in debut at Horseshoe Indy over an off track on a day where they were, or I shouldn't say an off track, but a fast track, but they were taken off the turf that day, and breaks its maiden on the dirt. Then is stepped up into the grass and runs 6th in a N2L allowance at Ellis Park. Then goes to Hawthorne and wins an N1X allowance. Then goes to Fairgrounds in December after a little bit of a layoff and runs in the wood chipper. And that race gets taken off the turf, runs 5th that day out of a field of 10. And now we're back on the turf. Well, the weather is supposed to be fantastic this weekend. And I just think Realignment's a horse that's just kind of been looking to run on the right surface, quite frankly. This horse has had 4 career starts, 2 on the turf and 2 in races that were taken off the turf, and has a win over the dirt, has a win over the turf. The fact that Block, keeps trying to get this horse on the turf, sired by Twirling Candy, makes a ton of sense. But this horse's 2 turf efforts are pretty good. 77 and 83 buyer speed figure, even ran a 78 in the wood chipper over that sloppy track. Again, I think this horse can move forward, has been training very nicely for Block leading up to this race, keeps David Cohen up on the mount. So I think there's a lot to like here for a horse that has shown some ability to sit at the very least a mid-pack to tracking trip. Doesn't need to be up in the lead, is not a deep closer, is not super pace dependent. So I think can get the right type of trip here. Just needs to work out so it's not, he's not hung too far wide going into the turn. But I think at 8-1, Realignment, really interesting horse in this spot, and one who I think still has a lot of upward trajectory to go. That 83 buyer speed figure is not a bad number at all, and it's very comparable with what you've seen a horse like Freedom's Way run the last couple of times out. So if this horse can run back to his best effort, he's right there with some other shorter priced horses in this race. So I think at the very least underneath, he's a very interesting horse to think about including in your wagers. Let's hit the first of many. And actually, the rest of the card is nothing but stakes races. So the Crescent City Oaks will kick this one off. And in this race, there's two heavy favorites here. The number 2, Blue Fire at 9-5, and the number 3, Secret Faith at 7-5. I'm going against both of those horses. Secret Faith is your morning line favorite. This horse is trying 2 turns. Well, I shouldn't say 2 turns, but this horse is trying a mile and 70 yards for the first time. I don't know if this horse is going to want that distance. And so I do question that, especially with what might be a contentious pace. As for Blue Fire, this horse won going a mile at Fairgrounds last time out back in March, but has also lost to Secret Faith before, very close by a head, 2 back, and at Delta Downs. And what is interesting to me is I don't necessarily, but I think this horse could get burned up on the front end a little bit. I could see some of these horses dueling each other. And so the horse that I ultimately landed on is the horse that I think will sit right behind that pace, which is Margie's Intention. I think the top 2 go at each other. Now, if one of them scratches, and by the way, Secret Faith is cross-entered in a race on it says entered in the 22nd. But Secret Faith is entered in another race that same day. So we'll see which one Secret Faith ends up going to. But if Secret Faith ends up running here, then I think that there is, because I forgot she's in the Fairground Oaks as well. So if she ends up running in this spot, I could see a little bit of a pace battle breaking out. If she doesn't, then I think you do have to look at Blue Fire as a pretty strong choice. And it's probably going to be a very, very short price because maybe then Blue Fire is low in speed and has already shown the ability to get a mile at Fairgrounds. But I think if they both run, Margie's Intention, 4-1, Brendan Walsh, Irad Ortiz Jr. up, I like this one a lot because this is a horse that can sit just off the pace, can pass horses, and finished second to Blue Fire last time out, but that was kind of that was a merry-go-round track that day, and Margie's Intention was also 10 plus lengths clear of the third place horse. And really, she and Blue Fire were the only ones that were in any sort of contention in that race. She's training beautifully for Walsh leading up to this. You pick up Irad Ortiz Jr. after Declan Cannon's been riding this horse the last 4 times. And I just feel like she's going to sit the right sort of trip behind some of this pace. And at 4-1 presents the best value out of those morning line favorites or morning line choices. Now, in terms of a value play, I think you go to the outside, number 8, Canal Street. Very similar type of horse. I think can sit just off the pace as you saw last time out when she broke her maiden. But this is one sired by McKinsey. And again, some of these state bred races, I do look at who's kind of gone out of town and gotten some maybe bigger sires coming in. You certainly have a horse like number 7, Warriors Justice, sired by Justify, though that horse hasn't really done a lot of winning, although has been competitive and kind of finishing underneath in a lot of these races. But, when you have, Star Guitar, great Louisiana sire, but you have Peppered Cat, you have Aurelius Maximus, and you have Gift Boxes, kind of your other sires really in the race. And so McKinsey stands out a little bit, I think, as a sire that has been very productive, has a lot of nice runners this year. And like I said, this one has finally kind of got the winning trip last time out. It did lose, to Margie's Intention 2 back, but that was also over a wet track and was sprinting before that. Not surprising, this horse stretched out and actually got a little bit better, got stronger as the race went on. I think Canal Street at 12-1 for Brett Calhoun with Axel Concepcion up, I think is an outstanding value because this horse should be sitting a very similar trip in terms of tracking the early pace and clearly like the distance, going a little bit longer last time over a dry, fast track, which again, that she will get on Saturday. So I think Canal Street at 12-1, outstanding value if you want to use this one as a horse to potentially upset the favorites or as a horse to use in your vertical exotics. Either way, I think Canal Street makes a lot of sense. And like I said, I have 8-1 up there on the graphic, actually 12-1 on the morning line. So even really better value than I have up there. Well, let's go to race number 6, which is the Coaster Rising Stakes, going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. Anybody who knows me knows that I always kind of dread handicapping turf sprints because it can be a little bit of a crapshoot sometimes with these races. And this is an interesting group because you have a lot of horses that just kind of intermittently run on the turf, will just kind of run on the turf now and again, don't run on the turf at all. So you have a lot of very different types of horses coming into this race. Ultimately, I landed on the number 8, Big Chopper, for Scott Geiner with EJ Barrera up on the mount. This one's coming off of a second place finish against $35,000 optional claiming company, but it was also over a good track and it was over a good turf course, meaning there was a little bit of give in it. That's one of the reasons I'm playing against Brian's Iron Mike at 7-2, who is your morning line favorite. Look at when this horse has won on the turf. Good surface, yielding surface. Those are the two times this horse won. I wonder if this horse is best over a softer ground. Listen, this horse is very good, Brian's Iron Mike, but I'd rather try to play against a favorite in a turf sprint just because these races tend to be a little bit of a melee. Big Chopper should be sitting off the pace, of which I think there will be a pretty significant one in this particular race. And this is a horse that, again, you go back and look, this is a horse that won the Coaster Rising, that won this race back in 2023, had a pretty long layoff of over a year, actually, from October 23 to November 24, came back and wasn't really doing much on the dirt. And then Geiner last time out switched the horse back to turf. And hey, the horse suddenly perked up, ran an 83 buyer, which is right on par with where this horse had been in previous efforts. I think this horse could move forward in this next start, second time on the turf. So I'm going to take a shot with this horse coming from off the pace. And the horse didn't even have the best trip last time out. Again, over softer ground, got off a step slow, was kind of positioned a little bit wide. This time, I think you're going to see maybe a little bit of a better start, being a little bit more tactical in where this horse is positioned, maybe a little bit more bid back, not giving himself as much to do, but has a great turn of foot that clearly didn't go anywhere, as evidenced from that last effort. And so, like I said, there's a fair amount of speed in this race, which you would expect in a turf sprint. And so I think it can set up for a horse coming from off the pace. Now, one of the horses that I have as a value play in this race is Monsieur Candy, the number 1. And I have a feeling this horse is going to go up in price, but that's just a guess. Part of it is because of Felix Estudio. And Felix is 1 for 77 winning at Fairgrounds this meet. So these are not very, lively connections. And even Alice Cohn, who's the trainer, 2 for 13 for the year, 2 for 15 all of last year, not, doesn't have a huge barn, doesn't really run a lot. What attracts me to this horse, who's coming off of a significant layoff, has not run since June 2024. What attracts me to this horse is, A, this horse has run well off the layoff before, almost broke its maiden off the layoff, actually, first time on turf. And the fact this horse ran and has beat Open Company. This is a horse that won an Open Company maiden special weight race at Keeneland back in April in gate-to-wire fashion at 16-1. Then backed it up at Churchill Downs, going 5 furlongs and $120,000 allowance against Open Company and finished third that day, which was not a bad effort at all. The race was won by Yellow Card. Now this horse is facing Louisiana Breds, not to make light of that, but this is a little bit of a class drop when you're going from $120,000 allowance race against Open Company to a stakes race against state breds and Louisiana Breds. A little bit of a class drop. Now, the inside post is a question mark. This horse does have good speed. I think probably needs to go and get out up front and go gate to wire. If the horse breaks right and can get up front, then this horse has faced really good competition, can do the 5.5. And again, it's just a matter of whether this horse is ready to fire off the bench. The connections are not going to be high percentage. 6-1 in the morning line. I could see this horse floating up. Again, a horse I might use more underneath in different wagers, like exactas, trifectas, but certainly one to consider and maybe take a shot with, depending on how you're playing that ticket. Let's head to the Crescent City Derby, race number 7 on the card. And this is a 1.16 miles for those 3-year-old Louisiana breds. And this is an interesting morning line to me because you have the number 5 Dapper Moon, who's your morning line favorite for Dallas Stewart at 7-2. And I get it. On class, this horse absolutely makes sense. Getting the blinkers put on as well, so the little bit of an equipment change. I just don't think this horse wants to do 2 turns, is the bigger problem. Dapper Moon's a really nice horse who broke his maiden second start at Saratoga and, looked really good doing it and was stepped up into the Breeders' Futurity and finished 10 lengths back of East Avenue and Ferocious. Then ran in the street since, finished 4th to Sovereignty, Tistastic, and Sandman. Then went to the Kentucky Jockey Club and finished 4th by 8 lengths to First Resort, Jonathan's Way, and Tistastic. Then Dallas cut the horse back to 6 furlongs in a state-bred allowance race, and the horse barely won, but at least did get the win as a 1-5 favorite that day. Then the horse goes to the Lecomte, granted over a wet track, but still finishes 11th by 11 plus lengths. Then Dallas cuts the horse back again to 6 furlongs, and the horse runs second at 4-5. And then last time out, the horse is basically 1-5 again and finishes third going 2 turns. This horse's 2-turn efforts are not particularly good. Yes, the blinkers are coming on, but I'll be honest, I'd rather use the horse that, oh, by the way, beat him last time out at a better price. Sippin' on Gin is the horse that won that Louisiana Stallion Stakes last time out, ran a 77 Beyer speed figure, sat off the pace and made an impressive move and was really driving through the lane. Has already handled the 2-turn distance, broke its maiden going 2 turns. So, again, I know this horse doesn't have the pedigree that Dapper Moon does and doesn't have the credentials maybe that Dapper Moon does, but honestly, Sippin' on Gin at 5-1 feels like tremendous value for a horse that is already proven to be better than your morning line favorite. Now, the equipment change on Dapper Moon might change things up a little bit, absolutely. But again, this is a horse that has been burning some money the last couple of times out at very short prices. Probably going to be a short price again, no matter what the morning line says. So Sippin' on Gin, 5-1, Brett Calhoun, Axel Concepcion. I think that's a worthwhile play to make, actually, in this race. Now, another horse that I think is a little bit interesting is the number 8 Classic Time. And this is a horse that is stretching out, going a little bit longer, but the running style would indicate the horse would, not mind more ground. Sired by Classic Empire out of an Indian Charlie mare. I think this horse can absolutely get some distance. And the mare has already produced 2 dirt route winners before. So you know that there's at least some distance in the family. And this one, again, pretty impressive horse, broke its maiden up at Saratoga in a restricted race in terms of sales price, because this was only a $40,000 sale, but still broke its maiden up at Saratoga, then went to the turf and ran the Skidmore, didn't run particularly well, went to the bench for 6 months, came back and won a state-bred allowance race by over 3 lengths, and ran a 79 Beyer speed figure career best. Now we're second back from that 6-month layoff. We could improve upon that 79 potentially. This horse, again, has a very versatile running style, being able to sit off the pace. Jose Ortiz up on the mount for Norm Cassie. That feels like a pretty good bet at 8-1 for this particular race. So Classic Time, I think, again, makes a lot of sense here as a potential upset play or as a horse to use underneath in that Crescent City Derby. But should be a really fun race. And I'm going to be playing against Dapper Moon here because that's a horse that just I really like the horse. I really enjoyed watching him this summer. I picked him, I think, to win that one day that he broke his maiden, but ultimately he's just a horse that I just don't think he likes 2 turns. And so I'd rather go with horses that are a little bit more proven and reliable going the distance. Let's go to race number 8 on the card, which is the Tom Benson Stakes. And I think that it is going to be a very fun race here. And this starts off this late pick 5 sequence. And I think you could go a lot of different ways. And this is a race where, I tried to get around the Chad Brown horse because I don't think you're going to get 9-2 in the morning line for Fun with Flags, the number 1 horse, who's ultimately my top pick. This is a horse that was running against very good company over in Europe, won the first 3 starts of her career over in Europe, admittedly all over heavy and soft ground, and then came over and ran in the Belmont Oaks Invitational. Not a great trip that day, was really wide throughout, weekend a little bit late, going 1 mile and 3/16, and lost to a horse like Cinderella's Dream, who was just a monster. I'm not going to hold too much against that horse for that effort. Chad's been working this one out for a long time. That horse was in Jerome Rainier's barn, now is in Chad Brown's barn. Chad's been training this one for a while. Some nice works leading up to this effort, has been working this one on the turf. And I just think this one's going to save a lot of ground on the inside. And again, it has a couple of different running styles, can show a little bit of speed, was sitting a little bit more mid-pack in that Belmont Oaks Invitational, but really has come from well off the pace when running over in Europe. The question is, can she handle the firmer ground? But there's no doubt that this one, I think, has a lot of ability. And for Also, for Chad to place this one in a stakes race right away, and this one's getting Lasix for the first time. So I think those are things to consider, because when horses come over from Europe, a lot of times it's because maybe they need Lasix. It's because maybe they need a little bit of a class drop, essentially, running against maybe better company over there. This one was Group 3 placed over in France. So very capable horse, and one that I think is, like I said, really capable of winning this race. But I just don't know if you're going to get 9-2 on this horse. Ultimately, though, I just couldn't really get to a horse like Way to Be Marie at 4-1 for Rob Atras. This one, again, just finished third last time out, and it's not the winning type. 2 for 10 winning, finishes underneath quite a bit, so hard for me to put a really strong conviction on this horse at 4-1. I do think Tufani is an interesting horse for Michael Stidham. Really strongly considered this horse as my top pick, but again, a horse that a lot of the wins have come against restricted or state bred company. Does have a victory in the Pago Hop back in 2023 over open company over this type of a ground at fairgrounds. But again, is a horse that you kind of know what you're going to get there. The last several times out, 82, 85, 84, 82, 82. You know what you're going to get out of Tufani. Second back from a little bit of a layoff. Maybe there's a step forward. But again, 5-1 on a horse. Like I said, I would include Tufani on my tickets for sure in the late pick 5. That's one I would absolutely include. Is 4 for 8 at the distance. So I do think the mile and a 16th suits this one really well. But like I said, ultimately landed on Fun with Flags. And then for a value play, and this is a little bit of a more underneath type of a play, Eastern Empress for Christophe Clement. This is one who I just think is a little bit interesting in that this is a horse second back from a 7-month layoff. And Christophe runs this one against Optional Claiming Company at Gulfstream. Horse comes from all the way in the back of the field, super wide trip, breaks from the 11 post, ends up finishing second. Now Christophe steps this one up into stakes competition. It tells me I think he thinks this horse is sitting on a pretty big effort. Joel Rosario stays aboard. This one's had some nice victories going back to the 2024 campaign at Monmouth, at Colonial, ran well at Gulfstream and Tampa. But this is another one who I think maybe has a step forward, because 76 Beyer speed figure is not going to overwhelm you that this horse ran last time out. But that was also first time in 7 months. Second start, you would imagine another step forward. I think this horse, the only problem I have, this horse is going to be getting another really wide trip. But if there's anybody who can figure out how to weave through traffic coming down the stretch, it is Joel Rosario. And so this one I just think is sitting on maybe a stronger effort than we realize. Because again, it's just the placement of where this horse is being put. For Christophe to put this one straight into a stakes race indicates that he sees something in the morning with this horse who, like I said, didn't even get the win off the bench and now is stepping up in class. So I think you're going to get a little bit of a price on Eastern Empress. I think is an interesting horse, sired by Dubawi. This horse can run for days in that regard. So interesting race, though, in that Tom Benson. Now, we could spend all day talking about this next race, which is the New Orleans Classic. This race marks the return of Sierra Leone. You will not see Sierra Leone's name up on the screen. Couple of things that I want to say. If I knew, I'm recording this Thursday night for full transparency, Thursday afternoon at 5 o'clock. If I knew who was running in this race, I might pick Sierra Leone. I have no idea who's running in this race, though. Why? Because Kinetic is cross-centered. Because Maycox Bay is cross-centered, though I've heard he is going to run. Touch Upon a Star is cross-centered. We've not heard anything one way or the other there. You also have Tarantino cross-centered. And I've also heard that Bishop's Bay is potentially scratching out of the race. And so I don't know who's running in this race and who's not running in this race. And that vastly changes the pace complexion. If a horse like Touch Upon a Star runs in this race, then there is going to be a very fast pace. And then, my friend, Sierra Leone is going to win. So this is a race that I would pay a lot of attention to who scratches. Because like I said, if Touch Upon a Star, if Kinetic, some of these horses stay in this race and run, then you are going to get a very fast pace. That sets up very nicely for Sierra Leone. If, however, I think a lot of these horses are going to duck Sierra Leone and are not going to be entered in this race. As a result, I believe that you're going to get a somewhat more moderate pace with a horse like Hall of Fame tracking the pace and sitting a pocket trip behind maybe Como Rubino Omoide in a really just what is going to be a recap of the mine shaft, which they ran last time out, especially if Bishop's Bay ends up scratching too. Bishop's Bay could present a little bit of pace pressure as well on Como Rubino Omoide. So, again, if everybody runs, then there's going to be a lot of pace because Touch Upon a Star is a speedball. Kinetic is a little bit of a speedball from the inside rail. Then you also have, like I said, Hall of Fame and potentially even Tarantino's got a little bit of speed. Como Rubino Omoide, Bishop's Bay, all these horses suddenly have a lot of speed. It sets up for Sierra Leone. If you're going to try to beat Sierra Leone, I think this is the race to do it, coming off the bench after that massive effort of the Breeders' Cup Classic. But let us remember that what did we know Sierra Leone for in 2024? For burning money, by and large. Favorite in the Belmont, lost. Favorite in the Jim Dandy, lost. Favorite in the Travers, lost. Then was 6-1 in the Breeders' Cup Classic, wins. Okay. Now, the horse has the win over the track at the Risen Star, admittedly a wet track, but has a track here at Fairgrounds. That race is the race that I think you have to hold on to because that's the race where he got really moderate fractions and still closed like a freight train coming down the center of the track. Otherwise, when he's won, it has been because there has been a crazy pace. When you look at that Bluegrass, 46-2 to the half, 110-4 to the 6 furlongs, closes and wins. You look at that Breeders' Cup Classic, 44-4, 109-2 to the 6 furlong. Are you kidding me? In a 1.25 mile race, closes and wins. But you look at when he gets 111 and change, 48 and change to the half and 6 furlongs, usually comes up a little bit short. Now, there's always been the theory that he just didn't like the track at Saratoga. That's distinctly possible. But it is one of those things where if he doesn't get a really hot pace, I wonder if he gets the setup. He's getting Lasix for the first time. I love this horse. To be clear, I'm a huge fan of Chad Brown. I'm a huge fan of Sierra Leone. I'm a huge fan of Flavian Pratt. So, I like all the connections here. I like this horse a lot. But if you're going to try to beat him, I think today's the day to do it. And I think it's just to say, if the scratches play out the way I think they will, I don't know if there's a lot of pace. And I think you're going to see basically the mine shaft part 2, where Hall of Fame basically sits a pocket trip behind Como Rubino Omoide and is able to then make a move at the top of the stretch and get the win. I also think this horse, in terms of Hall of Fame, this is a horse that has a big pedigree. Another gun runner out of a Giants Causeway mare, $1.4 million sale. This is no chump that's running up against Sierra Leone, who's a $2.3 million sale. I also feel like Asmussen's figured this horse out. He's a gun runner. He's developed a little bit later, maybe, just as Sierra Leone's a gun runner too, but it feels like he's finally figured things out, coming off the bench, winning 3 straight. Maybe the Lasix helps, but he's going to be able to stay on Lasix as long as he runs at Fairgrounds. So, again, Hall of Fame at 4-1, I think presents the most likely alternative to Sierra Leone. Como Rubino Omoide, I think, is a really good horse. 8-1, you're not going to get anywhere near that, I think, once the scratches come out, but is, I think, a very admirable choice to also go with if you're trying to beat Sierra Leone here. But listen, this is a race where either you're singling Sierra Leone or you're trying to beat Sierra Leone. There's very little in between here. Maybe you go too deep with Sierra Leone and Hall of Fame, but you really have to hedge because you could, of course, single good cheer later on. So, like I said, really going to be interesting to see how people decide to play this. But I'm going to try to take a stand against Sierra Leone. I could look like a fool for doing it. It wouldn't be the first time. It probably won't be the last. But if you're going to try to beat a favorite, this feels like the race where you want to do it, that he might come up a little short in a 1 1/8 race with maybe not a lot of pace in it. All right. Well, let's go to the Muniz Memorial, next race. And this is a grade 2. Very interesting race. And we're going to go to a tried and true handicapping angle referred to as the other Chad. And that is number 5 redistricting, because you have the number 6 Spirit of St. Louis 3-1, who is your morning line favorite. This is a New York bred who really has stepped up and done a lot of great things, and particularly has gone out and won a grade 1 last time out in the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational. But because of that win, is now going to get bet pretty hard. I'm going to try to play against this horse as your morning line favorite with Tyler Gaffney on up on the mount. I'm going to go to redistricting. This is a horse for Klarovich Stables with Chad that always had big expectations. This horse won in debut and was immediately stepped up to a grade 1. The horse goes to the bench for a little while, runs in a first level allowance, wins, and immediately gets stepped up into another grade 1. Now, neither of those efforts turned out very well in terms of those grade 1s, but then comes back after, again, a pretty significant layoff from December of 2023 to October 2024, runs second by a neck in the Knickerbocker, and then runs second by a half a length in the grade 2 Seabiscuit out west. Chad shipped this horse around. This is a horse that I feel like is continuing to get better and better. 98 Beyer speed figure last time out, coming off the bench, admittedly, but it's run well off the bench. One in debut, if you think about it. One coming off the bench against an allowance race, and then nearly won the grade 3 Knickerbocker off of a 10-month layoff, an 11-month layoff. So this horse can win off the bench, keeps Flavien Prat up on the mount. The horse can sit a couple of different types of trips, can have a wicked turn of foot coming from all the way in the back, can sit more of a tracking trip. I think he's probably better mid-pack. I think that's where Flavien's going to get him. But 9-2, I'm going to go with the other Chad here, trying to beat Spirit of St. Louis. In terms of a value play, this one is strictly an underneath play, but I'm going to throw one down the field a little bit on Cameo Performance. 20-1 for trainer Brendan Walsh with Irad Ortiz Jr. up. First of all, those connections alone are worth taking a shot. Second, this horse has some good races. I'm always willing to draw a line through Kentucky Downs because it's just Kentucky Downs, and they don't know, it's just Kentucky Downs. So I'm always willing to draw a line through that. You look at how this horse has been training leading up to this race, and the horse hasn't run since that Kentucky Downs effort. The horse has been training beautifully for Walsh leading up to this race. I mean, this horse has been training 58-3, 48-4, 48-4, 48-4. I mean, this horse has been like a metronome down in South Florida for Walsh leading up to this race. Sired by Oscar Performance out of a Freud Dam. And this one has a stakes win already, is getting Lasix, broke its maiden on Lasix here in the United States. And again, I just think it's a really nice horse. And if you're willing to draw a line through that Kentucky Downs effort, this horse really hasn't done much wrong. Didn't run great on the Churchill Downs turf. But again, that's another turf course that sometimes can be a little bit of an anomaly, just to be honest. And you look at the other races, they're all really solid. The connections, 20-1. I'll use that horse underneath. I could see that horse coming running a little bit late and maybe flattening out, but I could see that horse finishing third easily. And at 20-1 could be a horse to enrich your vertical wagers like exactas and trifectas. Let's go to the Fairground Oaks, grade 2, mile and a 16th. This is the single I feel like in the sequence. And this is the number 7 Good Cheer for Brad Cox. This is the undefeated daughter of Medaglia d'Oro, who won the Rags to Riches, won the Goldenrod, won the Rachel Alexandra last time out. If you were going to beat her, it was in that Rachel Alexandra because she, despite it only being a 4-horse field, she got boxed in. She didn't get the easiest trip. But once she got clear, see you later. She just drew off and won by 6 easy over Gal's Delight and Bless the Broken. So she's a really good horse. She's a really, really nice filly. Godolphin bred. This is, Immersive was the champion 2-year-old. Good Cheer might ultimately end up being the better of the two. And we'll just have to wait and see. I can't wait for Immersive to come back. But I think she's got another level to her in this race. She ran that 89 Beyer off the bench. That number was always going to come back a little bit slow because of the dynamics of a 4-horse field. But that was still a career best Beyer. I think she's sitting on a 95-plus type of an effort here. I think she gets the win. She does it easily. She's undefeated. She's never really ever been tested even. She comes from off the pace, but she's not a deep closer. She's going to sit the right sort of trip. There's going to be enough pace in this race to ensure she gets a fair trip. And I just think she is just the lock on the card. So at 4-5, she's going to be my single in the sequence. This is how you can build out around that, and you can spread a little bit more in a race like the Muniz Memorial. You can spread a little bit more in the Benson, maybe spread a little bit more in the Louisiana Derby, which we'll get to in a second. But I think she's your obvious top choice in this race. Now, in terms of a value play, I really like the number 5, Her Laugh. Part of it is, listen, we'll see if Secret Faith ends up running in this race or that Crescent City Oaks. We'll also see about what Bless the Broken does. I imagine Bless the Broken is going to stay at Turfway Park and run in the Bourbonette Oaks. But Her Laugh at 12-1 for Whit Beckman. That horse showed me a lot last time out in the Sun Coast. That's a horse that really had always done the best work up front. We're kind of closely tracking the pace, winning the untappable in gate-to-wire fashion. Last time out in that Sun Coast, through the head at the start, got off to just an abysmal start, was sitting dead last by 10 lengths. And this horse passed everybody except Lucara, who just got things her own way up front, was kind of an easy gate to wire winner. I don't necessarily know how good Lucara is, but still, it was the effort that impressed me for her laugh and the professionalism to show I'm not just going to give up if I don't get my number one type of trip. I think this horse can go to the lead, can sit a little off the pace. I think the horse learned a lot last time out. Irad stays aboard for trainer Whit Beckman. I like this horse a lot at 12-1. I think if you're going to try to beat Good Cheer, you got to start with her laugh, in my opinion, rather than Gallows Delight. And if you're going to try to make an exacta maybe a little bit richer in this race, then, just doing a straight Good Cheer, her laugh exacta might be the way to go. But I think her laugh is a really, really nice filly. I know the buyers are a little light, but I think she's going to come back and run a really big race here. Has been training so well for Whit. And I think that her placement in this race kind of lets you know that this is really the filly he feels is his best out of this group. So I'm a big fan of this horse at 12-1. We should also mention a horse like Gallows Delight, scratched out of the Virginia Oaks to come here. Girl Math, scratched out of the Virginia Oaks to come here. Gallows Delight is the one that I think is the more interesting of the two at 8-1. But again, Kenny McPeak, off Lasix. This horse hasn't really won. Did just chase Good Cheer around base, or tried to go gate to wire in that Rachel Alexandra, but ultimately Good Cheer just blew right by her. I do wonder, I think a mile and a 16th might be a little too far for this one against this level of competition. We'll see. The horse has been training very, very well. Brian is obviously up on the mount for Kenny. So definitely a lot of talent here, but a practical joke going a little bit longer. I'll might be playing against. Now, the horse that has the big pedigree in this race is Ahava, the number 3 horse for Cherie DeVoe, who's 8-1 on the morning line. This one's a huge X factor. Half sibling to Vava. What do we know about Vava? Great sprinter. This one won in debut sprinting at 6 furlongs with Lasix. Now we're switching off Lasix. We're going 2 turns. Those are a lot of things for this horse to do, stepping up in class pretty significantly against this good of a group. Would it shock me if Ahava ran a big race? Absolutely not. Cherie's a phenomenal trainer. Jose's a great rider. Together, they're winning 44% of their mounts at Fairgrounds. So you got to take them seriously. But I just think there are some questions to answer in terms of switching off Lasix and going 2 turns with a pedigree that honestly speaks more to this horse being a 1-turn type of a horse. So we'll see how Ahava performs, but certainly it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this race. Well, speaking of fun, the Louisiana Derby, the final race on the card, is going to be a blast. This is a phenomenal race. And I say that because I think you can make a legitimate case for probably 9 of the 10 horses in this race. It is a great betting race. And I am not a big believer in the number 1, John Hancock, for a couple of reasons. One, the horse won gate to wire both times out. Last time in the Sam F. Davis was clearly aided by a speed favoring track. Yes, Owen Almighty came back to run really well next time out in the Tampa Bay Derby. Also got things his own way up front on another speed favoring track. This horse's career best Beyer speed figures in 84. That is actually tied for the lowest career best speed figure in the field. Okay. So literally everyone except for Furio has run faster than John Hancock in this race. So that's a little bit of an issue. Additionally, what have we seen out of Brad Cox Colts this fall? Patch Adams, disappointment. Rapture, disappointment. Tapestry, second to Burnham Square. And then what did Burnham Square do after the Holy Bull? A lot of nothing. So it's hard for me to really look at a horse like John Hancock and go, yes, this is a barn that's rolling with its colts. 2 light speed figures, questionable competition in that Sam F. Davis. Poster's a nice horse who's going to be your morning line favorite in the Jeff Ruby, who finished 3rd that day. Flavian's up on the mount. The horse is going to save all the ground from the inside, but there's a lot of speed in this race. There's a lot of speed in this race because you got to look at Yinzer, who went gate to wire last time out. You got to look at Caldera for the coach who's going to want to be forward. Built and Vassimo are both getting blinkers at it. You got Furio, who's a speedball, a little further outside. There's going to be a fair amount of pace in this race. And we've seen horses like Sierra Leone. We've seen horses like Catching Freedom. Even Anna Marie, who ran 2nd, make up a lot of ground in this race in previous years. And Sierra Leone obviously did that in the Risen Star, not the Louisiana Derby, but on the track, you've seen horses make up a lot of ground. So I'm willing to take a shot against the favorite. I think Built, out of the horses that are a shorter price, is your most likely short price to win the race. I would rather bet on Built than either Caldera or John Hancock. I don't think Caldera beat much of anything in that Sunland Derby, and we saw what Getaway Car did next time out in the Virginia Derby. So I'm not enthralled necessarily with betting Caldera at 5-1 in the morning line. And oh, by the way, it's a My Racehorse entry, so you're not going to get 5-1. Built, I think, makes a lot of sense if you're going to go with a shorter price. As a nice horse, blinkers on for Wayne Catalano. Horse can pass horses, but is probably going to sit a little bit more forward. I don't think there's any question about whether this horse can get the mile in 3:16, sired by Hardspun out of a Curlin mare. So it makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, though, I'm taking a shot downfield. Chunk of Gold. Give me all of it. I love this horse. $2,500. You and I could have bought this horse for $2,500 at the 2023 Fasig Tipton Keeneland October sale. This is a horse that is the full sibling to the Martha Washington winner from last year, Band of Gold. Okay. Notably, this horse was sold well before Band of Gold won that race. And I would imagine would probably go for a lot more money now. And horse won in debut at Turfway Park, stepped up, ran second in the Leonidas to Baby Max. Baby Max came back to run second by less than a length in the Battaglia. So that horse came back to run really well. Then last time out on the Risen Star, goes to the dirt for the first time and makes up a lot of ground late, passes a lot of horses, finishes second to Magnitude. Magnitude was that runaway winner, huge buyer speed figure. Asmussen took him off the Triple Crown Trail 2 days later because of an ankle chip or bone chip in his ankle. Chunk of Gold, though, beat Built. He beat Vassimo, and he beat, oh, by the way, a horse named American Promise, who we saw come back to win in the Virginia Derby. He also beat a horse like Render Judgment, who, oh, by the way, we saw come back to run second in the Virginia Derby. So that Risen Star's come back relatively strong, and a Chunk of Gold's already proven he can beat these horses. 8-1 in the morning line, he's going to get overlooked because Preservationist out of a Cairo Prince mare, $2,500 sale. Ethan West, who's he as a trainer? Jareth Loveberry. You know what it's giving me? It's giving me a little bit of Two Phils vibes. Jareth Loveberry up on the mount, similar overlap there. Horse can run on synthetic, can run on dirt. I just think this horse is sitting on a big effort at 8-1. I think this horse is going to get the setup and the pace. I really like Chunk of Gold, who I think is training beautifully for Ethan West at Turfway Park and is going to come down and really enjoy the ground at Fairgrounds on Saturday. Now, in terms of the value play, again, could have gone a few different directions. You know, Hypnus is a horse that some people are high on. I'm probably less high on that horse. Yinzer, I'm not necessarily high on. I do think Tistastic could run a pretty big race. Is probably going to sit a pretty similar trip to Chunk of Gold. Ultimately, I landed on Vassimo at 12-1. That feels like a morning line you're not going to get. This is a horse getting blinkers on. And Todd Pletcher, Irad Ortiz Jr., this horse fits the type of profile I like, which is the horses run ascending buyer speed figures, young horse, lightly raced, and has yet to run his best race. Now we're getting an equipment change. I like all of those things. 73, 81, 89. This horse has gotten markedly better every single time out. Irad stays aboard, has ridden this horse all 4 times out. Blinkers, like I said, coming on. And I don't think the blinkers are necessarily for speed. I think it's more for concentration because this horse kind of faded around, kind of on the backstretch and around the turn a little bit, and then kind of rallied late and kind of came on again. And I think the blinkers are more to keep this horse focused. Sired by Jan Nyquist out of a pulpit mare. This was not an overwhelming sale, $120,000, but this is a horse that, won the first 2 times out, beat a horse like Rapture, who I mentioned earlier in debut, stepped up and won that optional claiming race next time out at Tampa, going 2 turns with Lasix, switched off Lasix and finished 4th in that Risen Star. Again, you look at 4th by 12.5 lengths, yes, but Magnitude won by basically 10 of those lengths. So really was 3rd from the rest by about 2 lengths. And I think if you think of it that way, this horse absolutely has an opportunity to continue to move forward. The fact that Todd's placed this horse in a very competitive race, I think, speaks to his confidence level in this type of a horse. Maybe Vassimo is nothing more than an underneath play. Maybe you use him in your, exactas, trifectas, supers. But if you give me anywhere near 12-1 on this horse, I think you have a really good value play in this race. Now, I know some people are going to point to Furio. Furio's an interesting horse. He's a speedball. He wasn't able to hold off a horse like Instant Replay, who I'm playing against last time out with Lasix. So, I have a hard time getting there with that horse. But like I said, for me, this race is about Chunk of Gold, maybe Tiztastic, Built, Vasimo. Those are the horses I'm looking at in this race that I really like in this Louisiana Derby. All right. Well, folks, just under an hour, or just about an hour. Appreciate everybody tuning in to this episode of Capping the Card here on NYRA Bets YouTube. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button to get all of our great content that we have up here to get you ready for the Kentucky Derby and all of the other great racing taking place across the country and across the world. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the fairgrounds on Saturday, and reminding you, it's now post time.